What's up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome into another episode of Saints Daily, your home for everything to do with the black and gold. My name is Tim, and today is the day. By the end of it, we'll know who the Saints have drafted in the first round, and the Saints will have a new player or potentially players on this team that should make an impact in 2026 and the future. As you can see, I got a different background today. I am in Pittsburgh for the draft. So if you see me, say hi. If you're planning on being down there and we run into each other, always interested in talking to more Hoodats and what they think of the team and their future going forward. Mickey Loomis did talk to the media, and I want to get into some of his comments. A lot to unpack. So let's jump right into what he was mentioning about the veterans, Kamara and Jordan, and what this draft might do in terms of impacting their future with the Saints. So Loomis essentially strongly alluded to the fact that whatever happens in the draft this year will impact the future that Kamara and or Jordan have with this team. And he kind of left it at this also might impact the way that they want to handle their futures with this team as well. It is not a one-way street, is essentially the way Mickey Loomis was talking about this whole entire process. This tracks a lot with what you've been hearing from any local reporters, anybody in the media about Kamara specifically. If the Saints do end up having a chance at drafting a Jeremiah Love, if he falls to 8 or maybe he falls to 6 and the Saints just see an opportunity to trade up to get him and they love the player and they want the player, I don't think Kamara is going to stop that from happening at all. And I think it's very safe to say that if the Saints go running back in the first 3 rounds, maybe, that may impact his future with this team. The Cam Jordan piece of it was a little bit more interesting, and I think that personally might be why Mickey Loomis threw in that last bit of it'll also impact how they want to go forward with us. And the reason why I think that was maybe more aimed towards Cam Jordan than Alvin Kamara is we all know Kamara has already said that he's not playing for another team. Last year, he was up for trade, and he basically told the media that if he gets traded, he's going to be on a beach sipping a margarita. He's not going to be playing with anybody else. He'll retire, essentially. Cam Jordan being a free agent right now still says a lot about what he probably is wanting and what the Saints are actually offering. I truly believe that if there was an offer on the table that Cam liked, that he would have signed it by now. And I think the Saints are waiting for the draft to happen to see who they end up getting. Are they going to trade up and get Narvel Reese? Is a David Bailey going to be a trade up candidate? Do either of them fall to 8 and the Saints end up getting them naturally in the draft? Ruben Bain is also being floated out there as somebody very popularly being mocked to the Saints. It's a position that is deep in this draft, not just in the first round, but really the first 3 rounds. You could probably get somebody who you can envision as being a starter and taking valuable snaps away from Cam, who most likely at this point in his career wants those third down reps to get after the passer, get the Hall of Fame number in sacks, retire a one helmet guy with the Saints, preferably, for Saints fans and for him, probably one helmet guy. Um, this draft could impact that. It's deep in edge. It's not deep in many positions, but edge is one of those positions that it's deep in. And depending on what the Saints do and who's on the board at 8 and, the first 3 rounds in general, remember, this is a team with 3 picks in the top 75. All 3 of those picks could play effect in terms of the futures of some mainstay guys and some franchise players in Alvin Kamara and Cam Jordan. It's nerve-wracking in the sense of being a fan of potentially losing 2 faces of the franchise pretty much within the same offseason. 3 of you include Demario Davis. This is a complete changing of the guard, and everybody wanted to move away from Sean Payton's whole DNA whenever he left, right? Whenever he retired and then he left for the Broncos, Everybody wanted to move away from his DNA. No more ties to Peyton. And everybody wants it until it happens. And I'm going to be honest, I'm one of those people who was okay with finally moving on from all the Peyton DNA. But when you embrace the rebuild build and you lose these veterans that you've cheered for years, it's a gut punch. And it's a little humbling to hear those comments and realize that this really could be the end of their careers with the Saints. Hopefully not. I think Cam does come back, but I really do think if the Saints go running back in the first 3 rounds, that might be it for Alvin Kamara. That running back room, we discussed it not that long ago. It's pretty full right now with Kamara, right? It's pretty full, but if you get somebody in the first 3 rounds that is worth those picks, I can see a world where you move on, and it's sad, but definitely at some point in time it's going to happen. I think Camaro will be able to keep it professional, and I think he will retire. Personally, I don't think he'll play for another team. Maybe the Broncos give him a ring, but he might be retiring, and it might just be his decision. It might not even be the Saints. So always a good time when Mickey talks. Sometimes he says a little bit too much, but again, it gives us some content to go over. And speaking of which, he also talked a little bit about the 2026 draft strategy. I am working on one screen, so I apologize. I am going to look down at my phone for the exact quotes, but what he basically said, Mickey Loomis being he, said that the Saints are not one player away. Essentially saying when you have a young quarterback, you're not one player away, and you're less inclined to give up assets to go get one player in the draft, which basically is saying, hey, this team is not in win now mode. This is not a team that thinks that they have to trade a bunch of assets, whether it's in 2026 or a 2027 draft pick, to go up to 3 and get Arvell Reese or get David Bailey, like so many rumors have said the Saints are potentially going to do. Um, Smokescreen season, right? And that works both ways. It works with the ways of the Cardinals releasing that the Saints want pick 3. Maybe that's just to leverage themselves a little bit more with the Chiefs to get the Chiefs to offer a little bit more. Also, though, with Mickey Loomis, smokescreen season. Of course he's going to say this. Maybe this is going to lower the Cardinals' asking price. If the Cardinals are actually asking for the sun and the moon for the Saints to move up to 3, Mickey Loomis coming out and basically saying, yeah, we're not one player away. We don't need to do that. Maybe that kind of puts that leverage back in the Saints' corner. With the Saints, it's never boring. I'm recording this video as of 11:30 at night Eastern. So this is kind of going to come out on draft day. By the time this video posts, the Saints may have already traded their pick. So with Mickey Loomis, it is never boring, and there is always something to talk about. But it is a really fun time to be a Saints fan because you can just envision any scenario, except for unfortunately trading down. Realistically, that's not going to happen. Another thing that was discussed a lot of, really all off season has been the Olave contract. And it's been alluded that, like really recently, it's been alluded that the Saints may actually draft with the contract that they know they have to sign Olave to in mind. Um, a lot of people are saying that if the Saints do end up passing on a receiver in round 1, that could be with the fact that they know they have to pay Olave, and they have to pay Olave long term, meaning that that wide receiver room can't get too much more expensive with the idea of Tyler Shuck doesn't have an option of or a 5th-year option on his contract. He was a second-round draft pick. After this year, he's already going to be heading into his 3rd season, right? This time next year. So if you do draft a wide receiver, you're going to start getting a guy in Tyler Shuck who's going to start being due for a contract extension in a couple years. You have Olave, who's going to most likely sign a deal north of 33 million per year. Guarantees will be a little bit different because of his concussion history, but it is something to be kind of cognizant of. And the way that I have heard it that I like the best about what a franchise quarterback does is when you get them on a rookie contract, you need to build the team up around them to elevate them. And by the time you pay that quarterback like he's a franchise quarterback. It is now his job to elevate everybody around him. I think Nick Underhill said that first, and I really like that, and I agree with that. You have to work around the young guy and build him up. But once you identify him as a franchise quarterback, he has to be good enough and to be able to justify how much you're going to pay him. He has to be able to make third round wide receivers look like first round wide receivers and all pros. It's going to be a very interesting draft and an interesting strategy. I think this is one of those drafts where you see this team continue to build the defense up. It's a very deep draft on defense. So I think this is going to potentially trend that way, especially with the way the offseason was, where you signed the left guard, you signed the running back, you signed the punter, one of my favorite signings of all time. Not joking, love that signing. You have your offense built up a lot more, and maybe you just continue to draft defense, get a wide receiver in round 2 or 3. That is also, again, it's a defensively deep draft, but wide receiver is one of those drafts or one of those positions that does also have a little bit of depth to it. So I could definitely see the Saints just continuing to go defense and get better on that side of the ball. Build up Brandon Staley's defense, get him his star role player early on, and allow that defense to carry this team through some tough games. This is going to be strength of schedule wise, kind of close to what the Saints played last year. So, all things considered, if you have an offense that is just healthy around Tyler Shuck, the defense being built out might be exactly what this team needs. Speaking of draft, let's look back on all the picks the Saints have made since 2015, kind of determine what you think as potentially successful, not successful, and just kind of what they've done historically in terms of who they've picked, what positions they are, and where they've gone. Now, a reminder, Sean Payton was the head coach up until very recently. You had a couple seasons under Dennis Allen, and now you have Kellen Moore. So the strategy is going to change. But working back since 2015, there have been 10 players drafted in the first round that have been either an offensive lineman or defensive lineman. 3 players that have not been offensive line or defensive line. So it would be a shock to see the Saints go O-line in this draft first round, but maybe it shouldn't be. I could see them just saying, you know what, best player available is a tackle or a guard, and they end up just solidifying the O line and getting some really, really strong depth there. I would hate it, but everybody wants that Philadelphia Eagles offensive line that won them the Super Bowl. No one wants to draft for that offensive line, right? You just kind of want to get those guys, but oh man, I would hate it. I would hate that. So yeah, 10 offensive line, defensive line, 3 non-line players, 6 defensive players, and 7 of them on offense. Starting with Andres Pete, left tackle, and moved into guard, and Stephon Anthony in 2015. And Stephon Anthony was a pick that they got from the Jimmy Graham trade. And then in 2016, they went with Sheldon Rankins, the only pick that they had. 2017, 2 first rounders, Lattimore and Ramczyk, obviously 2 mainstays. Ramczyk was part of the Brandon Cooks trade. And then 2018, the infamous 2018 Marcus Davenport trade. Because of Marcus Davenport, there was no first rounder in 2019. Bringing us back to 2020, where Cesar Ruiz was the pick. 21, Peyton Turner. 22, Chris Olave and Trevor Penning. So 2 first round picks. Both were trade ups in the draft. And you have Brian Brzee in 23. He was a first rounder that was given to the Saints because of the Sean Payton trade with the Broncos. So the Penning trade, I believe, was the one that was traded to the Eagles, where they ended up getting Jalen Carter, which hindsight, right? And then they didn't have a first round pick because of that trade, but they ended up getting a late first rounder for Brzee through the Broncos through a series of trades through that one. And then the last 2 years, the tackles Fuaga and Banks. So it wouldn't surprise me to see this team continue that trend and go edge in the first round. And you can probably include Arvell Reese with edge. David Bailey, you can include there as well. Um, I'm hoping to finally see somebody that's exciting. Just somebody who, when training camp comes out, there's just buzz around this guy, and it's not another offensive lineman just, oh, he looks good. In the non-padded practices where everybody should look good if you're an offensive lineman. You're not really blocking at that point, right? You should be able to look fine. You should be able to look good. A Jordan Tyson is a name that keeps coming up a lot. And if you're a Saints fan and you don't want Jordan Tyson, just prepare yourself that he might be the pick based off of everything that I've been hearing. Jordan Tyson, if he is there at 8, may be the pick. And it could be, once again, smokescreen season. Maybe they really do want Sonny Styles or Caleb Downs, and they're afraid that the Giants are going to pick him at 5 because they know the Giants love Jordan Tyson. And now maybe that opens up the ability for Jordan Tyson to go to the Giants at 5, so that way somebody falls to the Saints as they actually want to 8. I'm just, I'm ready. I'm ready to just know for it to not be a conversation. The next time I talk to you guys, we're going to be talking about the player, not the prospect. And it's going to be a little bit more in depth and a little bit more detailed. And I'm very, very excited about that. But as always, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this, press that subscribe button and drop us a like. Share this with your friends, and we will catch you next time.